for working people in this country. It's Labour's nightmare before Christmas.
Well, imagine the Prime Minister's shock when he finds out it's his party that's been in power for more than a decade. That just weeks ago it crashed the economy and blew a £30 billion hole in the country's finances. That it's responsible for the highest taxation since the Second World War, the highest inflation in 40 years and the biggest drop in living standards since records began. And all that's on top of soaring food banks, homelessness, falling life expectancy, fuel poverty and wage stagnation. And let's not forget UK trade performance at its worst level on record.
I am glad he's raised our nurses because they do incredible work, and it's worth putting on record. It's worth putting on record what exactly we have done for our nurses. Last year when everyone else in the public sector had a public sector pay freeze, the nurses received a 3% pay rise.
What nurses got after all the sacrifices they made to keep us safe during the pandemic was a crappy real terms pay cut. The simple fact is the government gave nurses a crappy real terms pay cut last year, a crappy real terms pay cut this year. It wants to give them a crappy real terms pay cut next year, and all that's on top of a decade of crappy real terms pay cuts. If nothing else, at least they're consistent.
And when they asked for nurses' bursaries, we made sure that every nursing student received a £5,000 grant.
Hang on, the Conservative government scrapped the nurses' bursary, which previously reimbursed their tuition fees. A £5,000 grant goes nowhere near to compensating them for that. Thanks to the government scrapping the nurses' bursary, nurses now qualify tens of thousands of pounds in debt, and the Prime Minister knows it. If that's not bad enough, he's now sending out members of his own government to lie to the public about nurses' pay.
The starting salary of a nurse would be £31,000. The starting salary of a nurse would hit about £31,000.
The figure he's talking about includes extra earnings such as overtime and unsocial hours pay. Basic pay for a newly qualified nurse this year would be about £27,000. The Health Secretary himself has admitted it.
Well, I thought you were going to ask me about nurses because the first strike we're going to have on is nurses. A nursing starting salary is 25.5 and we're taking it up to 27.
When members of the government have to resort to deliberately misleading the public, you know they've lost the argument.
Mr. Speaker, let's just have a look at the NHS.
Let's do that in their own words.
NHS backlogs. We're reaching the point where millions of people are anxiously waiting for the treatment that they desperately need.
I'm afraid some of our hospitals are falling apart. The Queen Elizabeth Hospital in King's Lynn near me, bits of the hospital being held up by stilts.
That demonstrates the actions of this government. Mr. Speaker, as I told the House yesterday, our new legislation will deliver a system whereby a person who comes here illegally will have no right to stay.
2 million adults in the UK can't afford to eat every day, never mind heat their homes, and the Prime Minister says this.
The most pressing priority right now is tackling illegal migration.
If that's not bad enough, the Home Secretary, who believes
we do need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights,
is unable to explain how an asylum seeker could actually get to the UK safely and legally.
Just a bit of role play. I'm a 16-year-old orphan from an East African country escaping a war zone and religious persecution. And I have a sibling legally in the United Kingdom at the moment. What is a safe and legal route for me to come to the United Kingdom?
Well, we have... you're fleeing which country, sorry?
Any African country.
Any African country. Well...
Could be any continent, but let's say any African country. I don't want to name one because then their Prime Minister might have a go at me for demonising their population. So let's just theoretically talk about an African country which is going through a period of turbulence and which is persecuting its citizens, including an innocent 16-year-old like me.
Well, we have an asylum system, and people can put in applications for asylum.
How would I do that?
Well, you can do it through the safe and legal routes that we have. We have offered 390,000 places to people seeking safety from various countries around the world.
I'm not Syrian, I'm not Afghan, I'm not Ukrainian, not any of those specific schemes. The Dove scheme is historic. What scheme's open to me?
Well, if you are able to get to the UK, you are able to put in an application for asylum.
But I would only enter the UK illegally then, wouldn't I?
well, that would, if you put in your application for asylum upon arrival, that would be the process that you enter.
How could I arrive in the UK if I didn't have permission to get onto an aircraft legally to arrive in the UK?
Let me just invite other colleagues if there's anything they want to add.